Namaskar. As you all know, that is just the beginning of Sharad Ritu. Sharad Ritu, one of our 6 Ritus in India, where everything is supposed to be more white and clear. Well, we read about the skies being very clear with white clouds, but we have dark clouds. So let's forget about that. But nevertheless, the Rajnigandhas and all the white fragrant flowers are all flowering right now, and the fragrance is filling up. So with that fragrance in our minds and in our heart, I would like to say namaskar to all of you. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this evening's talk by Bela Shanghvi on the mystery of the Patan Patola. It would not be incorrect to say that the diversity of the Indian nation and culture has been tied together by the thread of handloom textiles. From Vedic times, the weaving of cloth has been used as a cosmic metaphor. The universe has been pictured as a cloth woven by the gods. The cosmos, one infinite length of fabric with its warp and weft, constructing a framework upon which life, with its infinite variety, plays out. The weaver has been given the status of a creator who creates the cloth for every landmark event of life, from birth to the last journey. Poets such as Tiruvalluvar and Kabir have brought out the philosophical thought and parallels between this craft and life. Handcrafted textiles have been closely interwoven with our culture and even play a significant part in defining our identity. Amongst the huge variety of the amazing textiles of India, I think I would not be unjustified in saying that the double ikat Patan Patola has been the king of handcrafted textiles. I remember at a young age hearing the refrain of a beautiful Gujarati folk song with the phrase, Chela ji re, more hat mane patan nu patola muga laejo, lavjo. To me, the song brought out the longing and aspiration of this young woman to have a patola, which made me wonder at that early stage that this textile must be very special indeed. For this evening talk and the exhibition to follow at Folio tomorrow and the day after, it has been my pleasure to collaborate with Yashodhara Shroff in bringing this event to all of you. Most of you would know her as the fashion icon that she is, but you may not know that she is also deeply rooted in the arts and crafts. Besides studying art at the Art Institute at Chicago in the US, Yashodhara has worked closely with Tufan Rafai, the renowned expert in natural dyes, and with several other crafts experts. It was her desire to facilitate an exploration of the creative work of new designers who were developing vocabulary that inspired her to set up Folio, the fashion and design store, and also provide a platform for the young budding designers. Through this journey, her interest and pride in the handlooms and crafts kept growing stronger. It is that shared involvement with and appreciation of the crafts that brought Yashodhara and me together to present this event to you. The program for this evening is that Bela will tell us about the complexity and nuances of the Patola weave and why it has a pride of place in the world of handlooms. This will be followed by an on-stage discussion between the 3 of us on the Patola, and larger issues around the preservation and revival of precious handlooms like Patola. We will end with audience questions. Yashodhara, may I request you to share some thoughts on your involvement with Patola and to introduce Bela.
Very kind of you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to all of you. Many of you in Bangalore know Chandra through her multiple involvements with the arts, traditions, and Indian culture. She's known for the exposure she has provided to audiences here in Bangalore for almost 4 decades. And through her passionate work to preserve and revive our precious art, culture, and handlooms, through her organization Kadambari, the group she founded and runs through Kimkhap personal venture that is engaged in the revival of the traditional Banaras hand-woven brocade. And as Vice Chairperson of the Crafts Council of Karnataka, Chandra, I am amazed at your passion and zest in your work, and personally, it's been a delight to collaborate with you on planning this evening. They say every great design begins with an even better story. Today we are here to celebrate the Patola, a magnificent, meticulously woven fabric which is regarded as the king of textiles. Many consider Patola as the ultimate weaving perfection because the displacement of even one thread can result in a deformed pattern in a double ikat Patola. Textiles are cultural artifacts that reflect social histories of the places they originate from. Textiles in India vary from place to place dramatically, not only in terms of the type of material, but also in design. I first saw my Patola sari when my mother was planning my wedding trousseau. She showed me the most beautiful yellow and red sari with the finest fabric and weave. I fell in love with it, as did I with several Banarsis, Kanjivarams, Bandhanis, and embroidered saris. And this was only the beginning. India was then mostly a sari-wearing country. With a view to promoting creative clothing and helping our young budding designers, I started Folio in 1991. Whilst our textiles and crafts coexisted alongside the new generation of designers, they were not receiving the deserved attention. Given this background, I am striving to proliferate our rich heritage and hope to see that the skills of our master craftsmen and weavers are preserved, appreciated, and sustained. Life has come a full circle. Schools can in fact sensitize and teach children about our rich textile and crafts tradition. Once the vocabulary is learned, many more designers may choose to effectively adapt our traditional crafts without losing their inherent value. Before I introduce Bela Shanghvi, I would like to thank the committee of BIC for giving us this opportunity, in particular Shant, Ravi, Raghu, Lekha, and their entire team. Special thanks to Anjali and Mrinal for their help. To truly do justice in introducing Bela Shanghvi, I think it would require a talk of its own. As a long life chronicler of textiles, textile art and handicrafts in India, Bela Shanghvi's journey began as a little girl, when at her father's factory that manufactures looms, she was introduced to weaving and the nuances of operating different looms. Since then, her extensive career graph spans over 40 years, working in revival of handloom, handcrafted and khadi techniques in India and abroad. Her collections have been displayed across 23 countries via exhibitions, stores, and various international museums, including the LA County Museum of Modern Art and the Kunstmuseum Basel. Bela has addressed various industry and international conferences, including the UNESCO, Color Congress, and Indigo speaking on Patola, ikat, brocade, and natural dyes. She is passionate and has been instrumental in building awareness and appreciation, specifically of Patola and of handlooms in general, and in empowering and uplifting weavers and craftsmen across the country. Bela's design studio, Purnakala, has roots in Vedic traditions, where there is active work in reviving traditional antique embroidery techniques and antique handloom saris. Her work with various communities of artisans has allowed her to generate employment and give them the freedom to enjoy and develop the craft. A number of us in the textile community are eagerly awaiting Bela's book that she has almost completed, in which she has documented her years of research in various textile techniques in India. And without further delay, I'm sure you're all waiting, it's my pleasure to invite the artist extraordinaire, Bela Shanghvi, to present to us this evening.
Thank you, Chandra, for this help. Just as for this presentation, it has been Yashodhara and Chandra's support has been invaluable. I don't think I can do this on my own. Also, so many people are involved in this. I thank them from the bottom of my heart. The presentation that you are going to be seeing is done by Romal and Anjali. And I truly, truly appreciate their help, because I am not that organized the way they are and the way they have presented it. I truly appreciate that. At this point, I would also like to talk about my team of research who's doing on my book on Patola. And that's the pilot project. And after that, we are working on another project where the textile techniques of India is what we are discussing. So this is one of the earlier examples of our work where I started working on Patola around 40 years back. So it has been the journey of 40 years, which I'm sharing with you, but it's mainly the journey of Patola. This is what I'm wearing, was one of the first saris that we had created in Patola. And after 40 years, as you can see, what we have been able to achieve in terms of quality and in terms of actual technology changes that we have achieved through this. I would like you to imagine a Portuguese trader getting off in 14th or 13th century at the port called Mumra. Can you imagine? He is wearing Portuguese clothes. He absolutely has no idea about the Indian languages. And he gets off at Mumra port. He is waiting for the goods to arrive from Paitan and Patan, both. And the message comes as after 2 months, he will be receiving the goods as the goods are not ready. Can you imagine, for 2 months in a small port of Mumra, he's waiting. A rich merchant is waiting for the goods to arrive. Lots of reasons for that, but one of the main reasons is the fascination for Patola and the markets which are part of, even today, the Southeast Asian market for Patola. So, can you see that from Gujarat, the Patola, from here, the Patola started moving with the Portuguese trader to Kerala, to Telangana, to Odisha, and then Southeast Asian countries like Burma, to Cambodia, to Indonesia, to Malaysia, and all the way up to Japan. Can you imagine, at that time, the kings and queens of Siam would crave for Patola, because that was something which they had amazing fascination for, and they actually believed, and I do believe that it is true, that Patola has magical qualities of protection. I think all of you must have seen the maulis outside. That mauli originally was not manufactured. It was the remaining threads of Patola which were there. So I appreciate you sharing the Mauli with everyone else. Why is Patola considered pure and auspicious? In Ayurveda, we have Harda, Beda, and Amla, which is a combination of herbs, which is a balancing herb. And that herb is used even today in natural dyes as a fixer, or what you call mordant, for the color to get fixed to the yarn. So first it is soaked in Harda, Peda and Amla combination for overnight, and after they dry it, that is when the yarn preparation happens. But along with that, can you imagine indigo, cochineal, haldi, and many different kinds of colors had its own magical quality of protection. So at the end of the whole thing, one had antibacterial cloth or antiviral cloth. So many diseases are avoided because of one wearing the patola. And that is communicated when, mainly for the 7th month ceremony, when one is pregnant. Lot of people would come to wish her for the 7th month ceremony from different places. From her pihar, which would be away from her friends from all over around her village, and she needed that protection. Hence, she would be made to wear only a Patan Patola at that time. And the reasoning behind this is it will protect her from all the diseases that might come near her and may attack her at that time. And they saw that after wearing a patola, the pregnant women were not getting sick. And hence this tradition started in Gujarat. And it spread all over the world from there. When the Central Asian people, they go for war, they have war pikat. They don't have the double and the weft ikat or the patola technique. And they would wear the chogas made out of war patola. And the reason behind that was that even if you bleed somewhere because of the wound, the patola would protect and ensure that they don't get further infected. So, due to the wound they may die, but not because of the infection. So hence there is this whole concept of it being magical. For the crowning ceremony of the Cambodian king or the Siam king, they would all, even today, they would always wear a Patan Patola. And the reason being the same, that they want to protect themselves. In the motifs also, what we have, the motifs are created in such a way that it protects you conceptually. So I do believe that certain sciences are there which is not understood by modern sciences, but they do exist in shapes and sizes and especially in color. So depending on that, it tends to protect you. And it has translated into the culture itself that this patola, even in pandemic today, we wash our hand, and mainly the reason why Mauli was attached at the time of puja was so that at the time of puja, one is protected. When you have so many people around you, at least the contagious diseases will not impact. The structure of patola. There are amazing contrasts in patola. say for example, in making the yarn or twisting the yarn, there are twists which are S twist and there are twists which are Y twist. So most of the time, different people don't mind using both the S twists or both the Z twist. Whereas in Patola, I believe that we are so particular about the structure and the locking system, so that we use for warp S twist and for the weft we use Z twist, so that when they are woven together, at that point the locking happens, as the Patola yarn is hand twisted yarn, it is not machine twisted yarn. So can you imagine that the locking system locking and hence impacting the look of it? So as you can see here, the warp and weft need to be locked together at the stage of weaving. But the yarn needs to be prepared before the weaving. In Patola, there are many different skills that are required. One of the skills that is required is tying and dyeing. Can you see the sectioning is happening here? And that sectioning has to be the exact same size in the warp and the weft. So even in sectioning, there is precision that is there. Then, can you see that it is tied and dyed over here? And over here, can you see that one of the color is tied and dyed, and it's ready for the next color to start. After the sectioning and tying, the preparation of yarn for dyeing happens. Now, can you imagine that if after tying, if the Patola yarn shifts in between, then the Patola will not be clear. So one has to ensure that the yarn is ready for tying. And then the guides are created, which I'll show you later on in the slide. And with those guides, one can literally make sure that the Patola is woven with perfection. Then comes the dyeing. Obviously, the natural dyes, or now what we use is azo-free dyes, which is eco-friendly, and the azo-free dyes will offer the color fastness and the light fastness and the water fastness also, as compared to natural dyes, which may fade after some time. Preparing the yarn for weaving. This is one of the very, very crucial stage where the markers which are there on the yarn has to match and has to be reeled in such a way. And then I'll be sharing the slides, but I'm just sharing the whole process first. Then obviously the preparation for weaving happens, where the warp guides are first matched, so that the perfection at the warp stage happens. Then comes the preparation of weft, and then in the warping stage itself, one has introduced the weft guides. So what happens is, while weaving, you have the guide for weft also while weaving, so that you have perfection at every stage, and that is ensured. The weaving obviously has to be done with perfection, and the warp and the weft has to match at the right place at the right time. And if it shifts even by 2 millimeters, by the end of the Patola, you will have a gibberish design which you will not be able to even understand what design it is. Can you see here the base of the Patola, the geometric designs. When we increase the size of a picture on a computer, we have pixelization. Can you imagine when computers were not there at that time? They had this concept of pixelization and creating small squares, or what we now call graph. And in that graph, to create the design, and the perfection is to create a circular design also with the help of the graph. Can you see here? These are geometrical designs. In the beginning, this was what was created as Patola design, utilizing those small squares. Can you see here? This is the graph for Patola for a chokta bhat design. Now, here, can you see the base? This is part of our, I think a lot of North Indians will identify as the Kundali drawing. How our birth chart is drawn. And can you see that the sensibility and the sectioning happens in a similar fashion here and here. And there are at least 9 to 10 designs which are based on this pattern. Getting ready for tying, and sectioning is happening. Now, can you see that the yarn is tied and dyed? The yarn is tied, now it is in the process of dyeing. Can you see that after tying, the second color needs to be introduced? And here, the second color is introduced. First, you have the white color. Wherever the white is, that area is dyed. Then comes the yellow color. Normally, it is over dyed. So when the yellow, wherever the yellow color is, that is dyed. And then that area where the yellow is actually present, that is dyed, and then there comes the next color. So depending on numbers of colors that you have, that many times it is dyed and then tied again and again tied. So it's a complex process of tying and dyeing. First, the weft, which is about 6 inches in size and 48 inches at the most in terms of width. And the repeats are set in that 6 inches. Of course, the border and the pallu and the corners are done separately, but the repeat happens at that stage. Then in weft, that is in weft, but in warp, it's 6 meters of fabric which needs to be tied and dyed. It may be translating as double the fabric or making it half of the fabric. So that, but even then 3 meters of fabric, when it is tied and dyed and without it shifting while dyeing, so the dyes has to be so tight that it should not allow other color to bleed into the, say for example, if the yellow is there and the red is dyed, then the red should not bleed into the white and the red. So when people ask me that, oh, this is a plain patola, and why the value is much more than a plain patola, but the plain patola, the bleeding will be seen much more. And if the bleeding happens, you can't use the patola. So every time a color is introduced, you have to have 3 times tying over that area so that good quality white color or yellow color or any lighter colors are there, they are defined well. He's just over here, he's opening slightly and checking whether the bleeding has happened or not. Here, they are preparing the yarn for weaving. Now that's 6 meters. 6 meters of yarn is segregated with the markers on that, and that is reeled onto the warping segments of each yarn. Here, the weft is reeled into tillis, so with the markers on it. At every point, one is talking about, again, the precision of the whole thing. Now, the warp is being tied and dyed over here. Can you see the white thread which is added after the patola is tied and dyed? Now, at that is the weft guide. And at the end of the patola, I don't know whether at the end of the patola, can you see there is a white guide over there? That is the warp guide. So even when one is looking at a patola, if the white guide is not very clear, whereas when I am wearing this patola, the white guide is not very clear, because at that time the skills were not so great. But if you see today, say for example, when the lady over here is wearing the patola, the white guide I can see it from here also. They are such fantastic pieces. Now we are training the karigars to follow these guidelines in such a way that it would last a long time, and also that guide should not move. So this is what is happening. Now the patola is ready for weaving. So can you see that here? Can you see this is the weft guide? And over here also, this is the weft guide. Can you see how well he is weaving, that the weft guide is created absolutely white with little bit of adjustments in weaving. Little bit of adjustment is needed so that the design is clear. But the quality of the guide over here, and also in this piece, the quality of guide over here is fantastic. I'll show you. This is the weft guide. And can you see this is a warp guide? Now, when both of them are matched properly, that is when we get a fantastic quality of patola. But for that, you need the right peace of mind to match that. And that is something where the weavers are taught how to do that well. And it looks very easy that you have a guide, just match the guide. But practically, when it is a handmade yarn, the yarn may stretch a little bit in weaving. So one must adjust. Almost, there are markers inside also in the patola, so that they can match those markers with the warp and the weft guide also. These are amazing complexities that the weaver lives with. And many of the weavers that I know, they literally work with this as if they are doing meditation. At that point, they'll just take a bath, do their puja, and immediately from the puja, they will not eat anything. They will go directly for weaving. And until the next meal, they would not move from there. And because of that, the quality of patola is changing now and becoming better and better. Now, after the tying and dyeing, can you see the finished product? Chandra, thank you very much for sharing your aunt's photograph. But it's even at that time, the quality of guide and the quality of piece was fantastic. And after that, the nylons were introduced and fantastic synthetic man-made saris were introduced. And that is when the dwindling of Patola started. And at that time, I think 40 years back, I entered and I felt it was sacrilege for us to let this go. This is not my heritage. This is not Gujarat's heritage. This is not India's heritage. I believe this is world's heritage and we need to protect it. And that's how my journey with Patola started. There are three kinds of Patolas. There is weft Patola. This is a weft Patola. The lady over there is also wearing a weft Patola. I am wearing a weft Patola, where the work is done only in the weft. The warp is one color and less complexity. So the work happens only in 5 to 6 inches area, and then it is repeated. Of course, the border and the palla can change depending on the adjustments that has been done. Over here, this is done by Iban tribe, but this is warp Patola, and where the work is done only in the warp and the weft is one color. So we also started with warp Patola in Gujarat, but we realized that the takers for warp Patola are less because the understanding is way less, but the costing changes the whole calculation where people feel that might as well wear the weft Patola, which would be cheaper. And hence we could not create the market, and hence we are not working just now unless there is an order for warp Patola. Then, of course, the double Patola. She's wearing the same design in single, exactly the same design in single. I think there's something with this design that makes everyone wear it ulta. And that's happening to you also. When I gave this to her, the photograph is ulta. And it happens because in Patola, there is no right and the wrong side. So it's difficult to identify. That it's just that because the elephants are ulta, then you realize, or the parrots are ulta, then you realize it is ulta. Otherwise, there is nothing wrong with the Patola. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, the sections of Patola. The body, obviously, over here. That over here is complex because one mistake over here and one will be able to identify it immediately because of the contrast and the evenness of the design. So many times when it is even, people feel, oh, but this is not as valuable as there's a lot of design. But no, this is much more because the work is much more. Then comes the border. Can you see the border? And then comes the corner setting, where the border and the palla are meeting here. And there are 3 ways of celebrating the corner. In textile terms, corner setting is a very, very vital issue because 30 to 40% in this Patola, almost 50% of work is done while the corner is being set. In this Patola, as one can see, there is border and there is a sub-border and there is another sub-border. And all 3 of them at the corner is meeting. And can you see here where we have actually cut the corners? And it's in weft Patola that we feel that corner setting would be almost like 30-40% extra work would not be appreciated. Hence, we have not done the corner setting. And one can see the difference between the corner setting, the quality of the piece, and can you see over here? the white is not pure white. The yellow is not pure yellow. Even the pink is not pure pink, because there is one warp which is created, and then the weft has the work. Whereas here, can you see the smallest dot over here in the center is matched, and you can see it clearly from there also, because both warp and weft, both of them are tied and dyed. The white is pure white, yellow is pure yellow, green is pure green, and the pink is pure pink. So this is the difference between the weft patola or the warp patola will have similar issues, and the double patola, where there is a perfect matching of warp and weft happening. With the crinkling effect over here also is way less than a regular weaver weaving it, because he is one of the master weavers and he is able to have a vocabulary which is very different from the regular weaver. Obviously, the pallu has to be woven, tied and dyed separately for the weft, and then for the warp, it has to be part of the planning itself. Now, there are lots of motifs, lots of colors in Patola, and each having its own significance. The design that I'm wearing is known as Nari Kunjar design. Kunjar obviously is hathi. Who can afford a hathi and so many elephants in their house? Someone who has amazing amount of space, amazing amount of resources, not only the financial resources but also human resources. So a lot of us have the symbolism of Lakshmi with two elephants pouring the water on her while the bath is given to Lakshmi ji. Now the whole symbol is about Aishwarya. Also, where does a parrot live? Where there is a loud noise, a parrot will fly away from there, and the whole gang of parrots will move from there if it is a continuously loud noise. So may you have peaceful life. Not just Aishwarya. Aishwarya is also not enough for them. With Aishwarya, to enjoy that Aishwarya, may you have a peaceful life. There is a jhad, obviously a tree. The symbolism of a tree is, of course, lot of food, lot of abundance, along with fertility. So even in your old age, may you have enough people around you to support you. Women tend to have their own tribes. All of us have our own tribes who support us, who encourage us, or tell us where we are going wrong. So if they are happy, you will have a wonderful life. So the blessing is, may you have happy women around you. So the whole symbolism, each and every design will have such symbolisms around each and every aspect of Patola. Normally in the Nari Kunjar design, there is always the jhad of a different kind which is created, again with the same symbolism of having abundance in your life. So each design is created with some message along with it, and also the blessings with it. So when a new bride just got married, and when she receives the Patan Patola in red in Nari Kunjar, that normally is the the prayer of the mother-in-law saying, may you have a wonderful life. And these symbolisms is something which is getting lost. Can you see the patola that I'm showing? It has the elephant along with his whole ecosystem. Now, this is a weft patola. And in weft patola, as I said, it's only the 6-inch frame is there. Now, here, can you see that 5 sections are segregated and then created one patola out of that? So can you imagine the precision of matching the 5 different sections into one piece and creating a smooth patola, where one can't even see that it is woven and designed in 5 different sections. These are different pieces which are absolutely amazing skills are shown of the karigar. Now, how to evaluate a patola? The quality of the twisting, which will allow the deposition of the color to a perfection depth. Can you see over here, the pink is absolutely, in this patola which is displayed here, the pink is absolutely deep. It's not that shallow pink which is there, or the red also is deep red, and that will depend on the quality of hand twisting which is done. And this is what many times I use this, that it's discipline with amazing amount of undiscipline. At the yarn stage, the evenness is not even encouraged, where it's advisable not to have the even twisting, which is normally a must in a regular textile, in most of the textiles. Whereas here, the regular twisting is discouraged so that the dye seepage happens well, even when it is tied and dyed in smaller areas, which is very complex to understand, but at the same time, it's very necessary for them to have slightly uneven yarn. The fall is something where after wearing a patola, one should be able to just fold it up without ironing it. This is 41 years old patola. Till today, I have never ironed it. It's because the twisting and the quality of yarn used does not require the ironing. It may be light fall or heavy fall. It depends on the size of the yarn used. But the hand twisting allows this kind of privilege that you don't need to iron it. The design has to be clear and sharp as much as possible. Many a times while weaving, you will have to adjust, and the adjustments happen at the guide stage. The center has to be perfect so that we have that quality of patola. Colors should not merge with each other. The bleeding should not happen. Now, the minute bleeding happens, the patola goes for 6. And one can identify the bleeding has happened, so obviously nobody will buy that patola. The quality and kinds of dyes. Now, if they are using nephthol dyes, the depth may not be there. Also, the light fastness may not be there. So, depending on what one is choosing, that is what will impact the final patola. So, it's not just that use any dye and it will work. No, there is a specific, even acid dyes is discouraged. We make sure that it is azo-free dyes only. Setting of the borders and corners requires amazing amount of skill. One section even shifting, and you might not have a patola which is a clear patola. the size of the repeat. As you entered, you saw one of the patolas displayed over there. Can you see the size of the repeat is exactly 1.25 inch. Now, when one is, imagine that when one is dying, when one is tying, the seepage has to happen through that small area which is open. So at that time, the depth of color becomes extremely vital. And to create that, we have to have the uneven yarn at that time. The larger the repeat, say for example, the yellow patola that you saw, can you imagine when it is double in that large repeat where there are only 4 repeats in the whole of patola? At that time, the complexity of tying and dyeing and then weaving. Can you imagine that whole complexity of only 4 repeats in the whole patola? So there are reasons for the value change that happens. Number of colors used, and that many times they have to work and they have to tie and dye. So that also increases the value. The amount of zari used. Earlier, we used to use the zari in the border also. I am discouraging the use of zari in the border because the metallic yarn of zari will interact with the protein yarn of the textile or the yarn itself. And there is a friction when you are wearing it, the friction will be created and that will be the weakest point. So the tearing used to happen. Even if somebody is a collector of patola, one would notice that the tearing happens at the border stage. Not even in the palla stage because there also there is not too much of friction. But at the border, that tearing used to happen. And I do believe that after working so hard, these patolas need to be gifted to the next generation and then gifting it to the next generation. So for generations, if it is supposed to last, then we decided against using the zari in the border. But if somebody orders, we still manufacture it for them. Of course, the quality of weaving. When you give more time, when they are at peace, the quality of weaving increases tremendously, and hence the sharpness of the design increasing, the depth of the design increasing. So that dictates the value creation for patola. The time taken to weave high quality patola is normally 1 year to 2 years. We may finish some patolas in 8 months, 9 months also, but less than that, we can't have a good quality patola. So we have to sustain the karigar for so many months. Future direction. The 3rd century BC, the Ajanta and Ellora caves were created, and at that time in Ajanta and Ellora caves, there is a depiction of Queen Shivali wearing a very basic patola. From that to this complexity of patola, the journey has been amazing. Each generation has brought in their expertise, their ideas. But our generation, I feel, are not very active with that. And hence, right or wrong, I'm not too sure. I will leave that judgment to you guys. But I wanted to introduce a new vocabulary. And Fibonacci numbers always fascinated me. And from that, I have created different designs in the patola. Can you see that all this is Fibonacci calculations in geometrics which have been translated into patola. I do believe that in nature, the Fibonacci numbers are so very much there that there is a classicism which I'm trying to bring back into the patola in such a way that it should not go out of fashion. This is my version of whole thing. I am not saying that this is the only version. Each person can experiment in their own way, but this is something where I believe this can be the next future antiques collection. Can you see one of the earliest graph of patola over here? And the calculations are uneven and yet perfectly done. No other textile will require perfection at every stage. When one is preparing the yarn, when one is actually tying and dyeing, also when one is weaving, all these skills in one person is extremely difficult. And there are 3 master weavers who we have been able to kind of bring it up to that level, who are now teaching the next generation. I do believe that we need to support this activity, whether it is Bela Shanghvi or XYZ, ABC, but we need to identify the patola of the best quality so that they are rewarded for the quality. And I do believe that we need to support them in such a way that this is perpetuated forever. Whether Bela Shanghvi is there or not is a secondary issue. She may die within 10, 20 years. But I want to make sure that the karigars per piece earning and the perpetuation is connected, and that should survive. Can you now imagine the Portuguese trader has gone all the way to Japan, Okinawa, and can you imagine that he is landing in Okinawa where they had not seen such textiles ever? And with their simplicity, they are trying to copy the same thing into their culture. And the name given is Kasuri. Even today, world over, the patolas are created even while going back from India. They would carry patola and paitani for the European area, which has inspired the Central Asian patolas, African patolas. And on the way to Europe, many countries have developed the resist technology at the yarn stage. But can you imagine South America also has beautiful tradition of resist technique. So all over the world, it has inspired people to bring the patola into their culture. And that has been the role of actual patola, that it inspired Picasso also to work with that technique. With this, I want to request all of you to support these weavers in such a way that this world heritage gets sustained. Thank you.
So, we are now ready to ask you some questions and some
Please go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead.
The difference between the dress, but I've had a lot of people asking me, what about Rajkot Patolas, Saurashtra, Patan? So is there a difference between all these different kind of patolas of Gujarat?
Yes, there is a huge difference. Visually, there is not too much of a difference, but the qualitative difference is amazing. When you're talking about the pattern water is such that the pH level is so good that the depth of color is fantastic. the skill sets are different. And the technology with which they create is very different. So pattern, when it is done even in weft, it will stand out much more. Whereas the Saurashtra or Rajkot Patola, what is known as, they're also nice. And they are also Patolas. It's not that they are not Patolas. But the yarn used is not hand done. It's a machine-made yarn. The zari used may be real, may not be real. That's a different story. And each section will have a different expression of their own. But there is a significant amount of difference between the Saurashtra Patola and the Patan Patolas.
So definitely to go with a pattern then.
Well, actually, this leads us to the next question, which I think is very often in everybody's mind, because you talked about the trade going all over, but forget about the rest of the world. In India itself, after all, the resist dyeing technique exists in so many places. Yes. We have the Urasa, which is ikat. And of course, because of the ease of word and the usage of the word, we all have started referring to resist dye technique as ikat. You as a purist may not like that, Patan is being called double ikat, but at least for most lay people, you understand that is the resist dye. So it would be very interesting to hear from you as an expert that, the Telangana, the Delia Romal, the Pochampalli, the Orissa, all these places in India itself, where do they are different? Is it the yarn? Is it the technique? Is it the loom? Because definitely the Patan loom you didn't touch upon, but it's very different.
Patan loom is one of the most simplest yarn that is possible. There is not even a warp beam there. The warp itself is tied to the wall. So you can imagine that the flexibility that it offers, it's amazing. That you can adjust the warp thread by thread. So it's that kind of flexibility is not available with any other resist textiles. Vallari Pattu at Kerala also is not to use the Patola word, then it's ikat. And then it traveled to Telangana, or at that time Andhra Pradesh, and then it traveled to Odisha, where it is known as Bandha textiles. What happens is the tools used, the raw material used, even the technology which is used is very different. With, say, Telangana ikat, what happens is you can create 40 saris at a time, because the ties which are so large that it allows you that kind of numbers. Whereas in Patola, more than 4 and you have a gibberish Patola. I mean, 4 is also more. We never create 4. We create only 2 or maybe 1. So the precision work is very, very different. Whereas Bandha textile, the yarn is so different. And I'm a big fan of Bandha textiles because that allows me the frame. You have that frame where if you can show it to them, then I would love to talk about it. The Bandha textiles allows so much of flexibility without changing. So what happens is when you have a frame, then it will give you the control over the smallest area. I have got one sample over here at folio Can you hold it from the other side? I'll hold it from the one side. Give me one side. I'll take it from this side. Now, can you see, in such a small repeat, one can create such delicate, such fantastically, curved designs also. And this is what has inspired the Indonesian and the Cambodian designs. When the textiles from Banda textiles went to those areas, they preferred this to the original pattern. And this has been inspired by pattern. But here, it gives one a choice of going into the smaller areas, whereas in the sectioning is small. Also, the tools used are very different. So it allows you amazing amount of flexibility to create curvilinear designs. That is something which I love the Banda textiles for. I've worked in Orissa almost for 10 years. So I'm in love with Banda textiles and I've created many collections of this. But the one which you have, that as you can see, the quality of Banda is very clear. And that is something where their discipline comes into the play, which is very different from the pattern discipline.
So you would say that it is right now, I think a lot of things because of the machine-made yarn, even in the all these textiles from Orissa or especially from Pochampalli, it has a very different kind of glossiness and slipperiness that we don't see in.
Yeah, I think it has a very shiny nature which you don't see in pattern at all, I think.
Yeah, and also the kinds of yarns that are used in there. So one, of course, you talked about the Kerala ikat. You talked about the Telangana.
Delia Romal.
Delia Romal. Now, what is the Delia Romal technique? Also,
again the same thing. It was created for Arab markets. So only 3 colors were developed without any alive representation. Say, for example, if there is a lion, they will not allow that because this was for the Islamic market and it is not allowed to wear even the design of the flower. So the vocabulary is very different and hence the tools used are very different. And the language is also of that area because the markets were there. And eventually they were treated actually with oil so that there is a sheen which is created, which was appreciated at that time over there. So can you imagine that sitting in Telangana and imagining the market in Arabic country and becoming hugely successful in creating the markets for them, that the whole town then becomes the Delia Romal town. So I think our ancestors were amazingly innovative and were able to digest the information received by them and create it for the market and create the markets for themselves. It was amazing. And this is the culture which I'm missing just now. That what they were able to be so creative with, that knowing what is in your heart, they would understand it and create what is in your heart. And that ability, which came with the traditions, I think that is what we are missing just now. We are losing this culture of the live culture. Now, in pattern, there are certain aspects that are there which is not even understood by Gujaratis. Forget about somebody outside. And even when I was young, I didn't understand. So I can't even pretend that, oh, I knew it all. No, it is the culture which is not getting passed on. And to me, that is disturbing, and that's why I'm writing this book on textile techniques. So that these relevance to the lifestyle of the market, that is established so that the connect comes back and India becomes Sone ki chidiya again. To me, that is my last version, that it should, I think Ashok Chatterjee had mentioned this, that before Mughals, before colonial Raj, India had 28% of world's wealth. Even today, America has 24% of world's wealth. So can you imagine the Paris streets were looking at Indian textiles as inspiration. And the roles have reversed today, that we are looking at Paris to offer us the guidelines and the colors to us. And I'm not happy about that. We need to be the market leaders about this, and we still have this textile skills alive. We just have to translate it into the world market. And this is, again, I would repeatedly say that it's a world heritage. These skills are world heritage, not the expression. So if we need to, not just pattern Patola, for all the technologies, say for example, the technologies of Kinkhab that you are working with, or the way you are encouraging the young designers, these are the directions which are the correct directions for our future. And this is not mine and your future. It is our heritage future that we require to support. And that's why I appreciate our collaboration much more.
That brings me to my next question. What about the palette of colors? What I see is the traditional colors that have been used in pattern, and people wonder, is there a logic to not move to some other color palettes? Is there a reason? Are we going by like the Sharad Ritu or by the seasons, like the yellow for the Basant Ritu? Or are there some other reasons that we stick to it? Or like now you're moving towards Fibonacci. So what is the reason for the colors and motifs to change or not change? You know, this is a question that we are often asked.
The markets are changing, whether I like it or not. That's the ground floor reality. Earlier, the Jyotishi would tell what is your ruling planet. According to that, you wear those colors. Today, who is going to follow those advices? Even though it may be good for me, I may want different colors in my wardrobe. But traditionally, what was working for them was, say for example, if the ruling planet is Shani, and if you are wearing a yellow color, which is of Surya. Now, can you imagine how it would not work? But these are my personal beliefs. Today, nobody believes in that. I like yellow color, and yellow color is very difficult to get. Yellow color is most expensive, so let's get the yellow color. These are trends which are created depending on how it is expressed. And nothing wrong with that. It's the times have shifted. But given a choice, I still like to refer to their kundali. And what is the ruling planet? Depending on that, I like to create that color as a main color. And then different colors are added, supporting to that ruling planet. Or, for example, what are the connotations which when I'm gifting it to my daughter, say for example. So what is it that I want my daughter to have in her life? I want to make sure that I gift her that. Aishwarya, everyone wants that. But I like to, the Popat Kunjar design is one of my favorite designs because that means the Aishwarya with a piece to enjoy that Aishwarya. Today, a lot of people has Aishwarya. But are they able to enjoy that Aishwarya? To me, or as I was explaining today about the Pan Bhat, The Nagar community of Gujarat are very shocking community. They love that leisurely afternoon and their siesta. And can you imagine, after the food, a very interesting food is served, and the Nagar wife is sitting on a jula, making the pan for her husband. And the husband wanting only that pan made by her. Can you imagine that he is fully satiated with food, and there is enough water, there is enough in their life to be at peace? And at that time, there is a beautiful romantic moment that happens during the day where the communication happens through pan. And that is then communicated in the design, and that design is known as pan bhat. So the blessing when the mother gifts pan bhat to the daughter or the daughter-in-law, the blessing is, may you have such life where you enjoy all different things in life. And not just, oh, you have Aishwarya, that's good enough for me. The rest is not important. No. Every aspect of one's life is important. And every aspect will have that connotation to work with. And to me, these are precious, not just stories, but these are precious significance of Patola which we need to hold on to. And that is what I think I would like to work with. And that is what I'm working with just now, even with the book. And I want to make sure that the future generation understand that the lifestyle that our ancestors were living was much better than the lifestyle that we are living just now. It was rich life.
Just to add to the question that Yashodhara asked about the colors, I think there is also the other question that comes to one's mind, because I've seen those somebody has tried to do pastel colors in Patola. And today, listening to you, I felt that probably because of the guide that you talked about, weft guide, warp guide, and the whiteness, etc., that very soft color patolas, probably some of the quality, the beauty of that sharpness, what would you say to that?
For a patola, contrast is a must. Right next to each color, when there is sharp contrast, one is able, there is no outline created. So how do you create definition? In brocade, I can create, say for example in Ashaval, I just create an outline around the flower. And that flower becomes prominent. Whereas in Patola, how do you do that? You can't create an outline. So the contrast is a must. So when, say for example, if one is creating a baby pink Patola, it's not that one can't create. One can still create. But right next to it, when you are using yellow, it can't be sharp yellow. It has to be a subtle yellow. So everything becoming subtle, 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 the design will not be seen at all. So what do you want the Patola for? You know, it's like, it's not that one does not want to experiment with colors, but those colors have to stand. Say, for example, the black bandhani that you are wearing, there is a black background, and on that there is a red background created, and in that red background, the yellow dots are created. Now, that creates the definition for the yellow dots. Now, how do you do that in the Patan Patola? And hence, I feel it is sacrilege to work with certain colors in Patan Patola. Where you can't even see the design, then what is the whole point of, then might as well print it, no? There's no point, I mean, this is my personal view. I may be right or I may be wrong, but I do believe in this, that The contrast has to be sharp enough. For the contrast to be sharp enough, you need strong colors. And hence the colors which are used in pattern. Also, I believe in color therapy, which is part of our chakra therapy, which chakra is not in balance. Now, if it is, say, my throat chakra, if it is not in balance, I would I have created turquoise patolas, even though it's not part of the vocabulary. But traditionally in Ayurveda, one would use opal, not opal, the other one, turquoise. Yeah, turquoise itself, to cure the throat elements. Now, that has been incorporated since generations. It's not Bela Shanghvi's invention, but I have just brought it to that area where the contrast is created in the border, and there is a plain which I may be wearing tomorrow. But at the same time, that is what the reason, which is I believe is the reasonable reason to utilize. And it's not just because I like turquoise color. I think these are some of the issues that I like to create the patola in that fashion so that it is beneficial to the wearer.
Actually, I know that we are running out of time, and I'm sure people have some questions. But just before handing it to the audience, I think it would be really nice to sort of mull over whatever so many things that you have said, and perhaps most importantly, that how do we transfer the passion, the understanding, and connection with all these amazing handlooms and their skills to the next generation, because it really is like passing the parcel. I mean, we are fortunate that it has come till us, but then the responsibility is also very huge that it must not end with us. So I think it would be, really interesting to have other people, this little community at least that we have got here today, to think about how we can, take the wealth of these handloom traditions to the younger generation. How do we engage them in these kinds of dialogues and carry them forward, right?
Yes,
what did you say? Yeah?
It's very important, I think, because a lot of influence, like you were saying, it may be Western, it may be, so it's important to know about our tradition, our heritage, and then make the choice of where we want to go and how we want to incorporate everything around the world. Right, Bela?
Western is not necessarily bad.
No, not at all. What we want to incorporate from any part of the world.
Blindly taking the Western, that, according to me, is not working for us. So let's see their viewpoints.
Yeah. We'll take the
Anybody?
questions. Anybody?
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bela, for that very enlightening talk and taking us through the history of the Patola. I have a question. I mean, you have this incredible wealth of knowledge, so does Chandra Didi. How do we take this knowledge to students of fashion, for example, in institutes? Because I just feel that there's such a dearth of knowledge that is imparted to fashion students who are actually going to be the promoters of Indian textiles in the coming years and ensure the continuity of these traditions through the creations that they create for a modern Indian woman. It could be a traditional avatar using the textile, or it could be a modern avatar, but it ensures the continuity of the textile. So,
Absolutely.
what is your...
Yesterday, Yashodhara was wearing a dress made with bandhani. Simple dress, not a very complex in terms of cut and all that. But in front of me, I mean, of course, first I appreciated that because when I saw it, it was fantastic. The new way of using bandhani. And at least 10 people must have complimented her for that particular use of bandhani. What happens, unfortunately, in the Fashion Institute, at least wherever I am teaching, they don't have Indian textiles as a subject. They don't have even the basic knowledge of the segregation of textiles. Hence, I'm inspired to write. I mean, I don't still have the publisher or the sponsorer for that. I'm not trying to seek any support or something, but that's the reality that I have been writing this book since last 12 years. Whatever knowledge I've worked with 56 different techniques, handloom techniques, 43 different handicrafts techniques, and 4 khadi techniques. I do believe that I can download that in the book. I want to make sure that the publisher has enough reach in the museums of the world, also the fashion technology and textile technology student. Today, one of the very interesting student had come for the exhibition, and she was asking the right questions, where the understanding of basic textiles. Now, even for fashion institutes, the understanding of basic raw material that they are using, that's not there. And how the fabric falls and how that fabric is constructed so that they can use it in the way that would be beneficial for their design, that basic understanding is also not there. I'm teaching Indian textiles to at least 4 different institutes. But that's 1 class per year. What can you give them in 1 class per year? And they don't have budgets for more than that. And these are the ground floor realities. We desperately need to make sure if we want these to continue. And hence, I'm working constantly on this book. Every day, 2 hours on that book. So that even when I die, at least this documentation will be there. Somebody else can publish it, document it, and then publish it. And so many of the techniques, while I'm working, the number of weavers, the number of practitioners are going down and down and down. Yesterday, I was having this discussion with that gentleman. He went to Kanchipuram. I worked in Kanchipuram extensively, and one of my favorite places to go to and work with. And he was talking about a Hyundai factory coming near Kanchipuram. They are offering 45,000 to 65,000 rupees per person, along with full meal for all 3 times, along with the transportation and other perks. Now, I do believe that even weavers have a right to have a better life. So obviously, many of them have chosen, the number that he quoted was 80% of the weavers have chosen that. And I don't blame them, because that will mean an amazing jump in their lifestyle. But at the same time, as weavers, we are not able to offer that, and hence the mechanization is happening constantly. That the whole Kanchipuram sari can be woven with synthetic yarn or even the natural yarn, but totally on, or fully, or not even power looms, fully automatic looms. Can you imagine that? That we are losing so many skills. I'm not bothered about, a lot of people should have nice quality of life. But here, that whole vision of our skill set getting lost always bothers me. And I totally agree with you that we need to do something. Now, as Bela Shanghvi, I don't know what I can do to make sure that they have a curriculum where they have the in-depth knowledge of how the material is made, so that it is advantageous for them to have the formal. There is a beautiful, I don't know how many of you have seen Roman Holidays, where Audrey Hepburn is the princess and she's attending the ball and she is wearing a taffeta gown. What happens in that, I think most of the people miss this, but when she is twirling while dancing, the gown goes 1 second delayed behind her because it's a formal gown. And that creates that elegance, which is very different from my fair lady, Audrey Hepburn, wearing that straight georgette gown. Now, these things are not even thought of by the fashion students. Now, this is what we need to promote in India. I'm sorry, I think this is a passionate subject, so I'm taking too much of your time, too much of the time on a different subject, but I do believe that something needs to be done. Thank you.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, just while discussing, you told that you want India to be Sone ki Chidiya.
Yes.
Yeah, so where do we lack and how we can help to get the things done?
Oh, how? I mean, there are so many places that we lack. One is education itself.
Yeah, secondly, in
the
what
second
way,
thing
what is
is-
your advice to the people who are coming, who are attending this show? So what is the advice to us that how we can promote?
Buy handloom, wear handloom, and on social media, talk about the handloom. These are the things which will change the whole. The Indian market today is one of the largest market in the world. If we start wearing handloom, we can change the life of handloom weavers. And not only the weavers, the ecosystem around the weaver, we can change the life.
This is a historical question. You seem certain that this technique started in Patan, or that Patola originates there, despite the fact that there are very old samples you can find all over the world. So could you give us some of the historical evidence for that?
Unfortunately, I don't have evidence. The only evidence that we have is it is still a live culture, whereas everywhere else, it's gone dead. Say, for example, in Python, nobody is working with even dyeing just now. So, obviously, the weavers which were there the best weavers were transported to Patan, and the rest were not even interested because they were fantastic in Python. So, one has to recognize that it is going to change and it is going to evolve. This is part and parcel of any tradition. But the next generation will have to take it forward that, oh, okay, let's do something about it. But for that, we need proper documentation. This is one of the things that is the next step. That unless we have the proper documentation of each technology that we have, from the whole, till today, we have been able to identify almost like 380 different techniques all over India. I remember I had gone to Laos, where there was a UNESCO conference on brocades. Each country had come with one technology, maybe 1.5 technology. I had 36 different techniques, and yet I felt I was not representing India. Such rich heritage that we have. And how many countries can boast of this? We can boast of it. And most of them are even alive today. So even if 100 Bela Shanghvis pick up one technique, it will still be less. So we need to get up and have our education address this. Because these skill sets, when they are gone, to bring it back, it's very difficult. And I have the experience in that. So we need to make sure that they're sustained even just now.
I think what Pratiti was also wanting to know was that, when we go back into history, then is there a point where we can actually peg it? Because so much of it, of course, has come through oral tradition, these techniques, Guru Shishya Parampara.
What does it mean?
Yeah, she was saying that you mentioned, would you like to just repeat your question, Pratiti?
Is the origin of the technique.
Oh, okay. What you're trying to say is to identify the pattern Patola, which is part of the museums.
No, you find in museums samples, say, from Turkey, which are from the 8th century or 6th century or, other places. So how is it, how are you so certain that it all started in Patan?
When it is from Turkey, the weave used is either sateen weave or sateen weave. So it's not the plain weave, which is the USP of Patan. With the simplest weave, they are creating fantastic designs. Also, there are certain herbs which are not used in Turkey, which are used here. So there are ways of identifying. It's just that we need to do a little bit of research in that. It's not very difficult because pattern it's very complex to get the exact pattern anywhere else. Also because of the quality of water which is available there. So one can identify certain elements of the pattern Patola. Even from Saurashtra Patola, you can find out. If you have the eye, which is a discerning eye, and if you know the USP of pattern, and if you know the USP of Saurashtra Patola, you can tell that there are 2-3 people wearing pattern. Unfortunately, 2 were wearing the Saurashtra Patola. I don't want to name them, but at the same time, why to tell them now the piece has come into their collection? I don't want them to feel that, they've got a Saurashtra Patola in their collection. But that is going to happen. But what you're talking about, Turkey and India, the technology is very distinct.
No, I think probably what you said about the spice route and the salt route, so probably that is the way that since that has been established that the trading was happening on that route, so therefore perhaps the Patola skills and techniques went all over the world. So there is no proper documentation. However, enough evidence to show that the very evolved techniques that exist even today in Patan, they were the source from where little bits went and experimentation happened and became part of the vocabulary of that particular nation. Yeah. I know we are really running out of time, and we started a little late because of the rains, and but we do need to close up. So if we'll just take one last question, right, and then we'll close. Yes. Yes. Okay.
Absolutely no, because the Valaripattu, that has been there even before the Telangana Ikat and even before the Bandha textiles.
I have never seen it anywhere.
Oh, no. They use it, as a backdrop, like how we use Pichwai as a backdrop at the Ambaji. I don't know what they call in Kerala, but the Ambaji's temples will always have a Valaripattu or Valaripattu alike textiles behind her, so that there is a presence of Shakti, the Shakti Devi. Yes.
Yeah, this.
Yeah, sorry? Calico Museum has samples of Valaripattu. As much as I know, it is Valaripattu.
Yeah.
We
have a question here.
I can't commit that I know, but I have seen the textile. Yeah. And I have seen how bright it is and how fantastic it is. Even the Gerua color on the cottons of Kerala, the depth of color that is achieved because the yarn is handmade yarn, It's absolutely fantastic. It may not be in popular culture at this point, but earlier they were absolutely amazing textiles that they used to have.
Hi, I just have
We're
one
going to
last
take
question.
the last question there.
Yeah.
We'll have to be quite crisp.
Absolutely.
With the
This is more of a
response.
market-driven question, and I'm from the technology industry, and I'm trying to go market first. So, couple of tiny questions. One of them is the price of a patola has gone up a lot, right? Like, for example, a Kanjivaram at some stage would have been 3,000, 5,000. Now it's 25, 1 lakh. But from what you're saying, people are not rushing to start weaving patolas and Kanjivarams. So where is that extra money going? If it's not going to the weavers, then where might it be going? That is one question.
Let me address this and then
Sure.
go to the next question. Just now, the price of living has gone up tremendously. So today, say for example, I forgot to talk about this, that the first patola that came into my family was for 300 rupees. And I remember there was a darbar happening for the Diwali that always used to happen, and my father's mama in front of everybody tells me, don't be like your mother. She spends 300 rupees on a sari, where a basket full of gold can come in that sari. Now, can you see that even a Gujarati had this calculation that patola is very expensive? And even today, it feels that it has become more expensive. But can you imagine, let's not talk about 2 years and 3 years. Let's talk about 8 months. If the weaver has to sustain 1 lakh rupee sari, 20,000 rupees goes into the raw material.
Right.
So he has 80,000 rupees. In 8 months, per month, he gets only 10,000 rupees per month. And family of 4, how difficult it would be to survive.
Absolutely.
And yet, when it comes to the per piece earning increasing, nobody is willing to give that price.
Absolutely.
And to me, that is the reason why the numbers are dwindling. If they're not earning enough, why would they come to? And Hyundai factory is there, right next to it.
Yeah.
Why not?
I have a follow-on question, but I think he'll get
Please.
violent. So I'll come catch you later.
Yeah, we can probably.
Yeah, let's take it
Yeah, we
outside.
can
talk
probably. Would you like to just?
And thank you very much, Bharti. I truly appreciate you wearing. I want you to come and show the patola to everybody. Please come. Yeah. What is the next question in the meantime?
No, I think.
Outside.
I,
Okay.
Come,
We can
come,
take
come.
questions outside
But,
now.
Yeah. Show the patola to everyone. That how well executed this patola is. And Bharti is a dear friend and is wearing it today.
Wow.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy that you see us.
But before we close this session, we would like to thank BIC and, of course, Raghu and the technical team. They've just been so wonderful. And would like to thank all of you